right. Appreciate everybody being here. Looking forward to starting our week one here. Seems like we've been preparing for this game for 6 months, but we're really excited that game week is finally here. Started our scouting report on Washington and started our in-week schedule today. Would like to say this about our football team. We finished training camp. Had a great training camp. This has probably been one of the most enjoyable training camps I've ever had. We have a lot of new players. We really only have one defensive starter back, a bunch of new defensive players, new defensive coaching staff. But the new players and the coaches that we brought in have really instilled a lot of passion and energy in our program. And it's just been an enjoyable thing to come to work every day. Our motto is we over me, and we say that our connectiveness is our superpower, and I've felt that the last 3 weeks. We have gotten closer as a football team. We've had incredible meetings. The kids that we've brought in are extremely humble and extremely hungry, and they want to be part of a team. And I've been so proud of the type of people we've been able to attract to Colorado State. So that has been something I've really been excited and proud about. We're excited for game week. We're starting off this season, heading to Washington. We got a beautiful Seattle day today, overcast and spitting rain, which gets us ready for the weekend. But we're excited to head to Washington and play a Big Ten football team on the road. Really solid, quality team, well coached. It's the second year there for Jed Fish. They got talented players. Offensively, got 3 really good players. Their running back, number 1, Coleman, is an excellent back. Strong, powerful, good vision. Probably their best player on their team. Their quarterback's a young guy, very talented. Couple starts last year, played in every game, played in the bowl game. He's a guy that we're going to have to do a good job of keeping track of. Boston, their receiver, number 12, big, tall kid that can really run. They kind of look for him in critical situations. He's a big target, and we're going to have to know where he is on every snap and do a good job on him. Defensively, Ryan Walters is their new coordinator. Coming from Purdue, I coached with Ryan when I was at Oklahoma. I've known him a long time. Excellent coach, really a high-pressure defense, and they play some unusual schemes, a lot of bear at Purdue. We'll see if that carries over to this year, but really a unique defensive style. We're going to have to do a really good job of handling that up front. And also, Braden's going to have to do a really good job of handling their defensive pressure. Obviously, starting the season with a road game in a good environment. I really believe this, that, having Braden Fowler, Nicolosi in his 3rd year as a starter is a real comfort for me as a head coach. He's become the face of our program. There really isn't much that he hasn't seen as a quarterback, and I feel very good about him going into this season and his progress. His leadership has grown tremendously, and I'm so excited to see him play this year, with the maturity and the knowledge that he's gained over the last couple of seasons. Very, very proud of our leadership. We've got new leadership on this team as well. We've got 4 defensive captains, with Mukende, with Jacob Ellis, with Owen Long, Jaquez Evans, Donut. And even though, several of those guys are new players this year, they've really impressed their teammates with their ability to play and their leadership for the team. And then of course on offense, Tanner Morley and Braden Fowler Nicolosi, I really feel good about where we're going with those guys leading our football team. So with that, it's exciting to get started. We're anxious to play. We're tired of practicing against one another and ready for the season to begin.
You look at the first week and even these 0-week games, it's teams that can avoid those little mistakes that get them into trouble. You've stressed that all throughout camp. Do not beat ourselves. How's that process gone, and what has you encouraged going into week one?
Well, we've been a program. We've tried to focus on the things we need to do to win games. And there's a process to that. You know, Coach Saban talks about the process. Sometimes it gets worn out, that term, but it really is. We want them to focus on the day-to-day things that they need to do to have success. And so when you do that, you don't worry so much about who you're playing, if you're playing on national TV, what kind of stadium. All those things are really irrelevant. What's important is, what do I need to do for this scheme, and how can I focus on executing my fundamentals properly? And that's where we spend all our time and energy as a staff. And we just try to get our kids to understand that, to be honest with you. So it'll be no different Saturday night. You know, we have certain things we want to stress offensively, defensively, and special teams. You know, really been emphasizing special teams. We have a lot of new players on special teams. And, you know, new return men, new kickers, new holders, new snappers. And so getting those kids in game situations and having them learn from that, really important. You know, we've been practicing in the noise. We had a mock game this weekend. Really learned a lot from that. And so I think, to make a long story short, we've practiced those game situations more than we ever have to help get them ready for this first game.
You mentioned special teams, and you lose a lot of players that were key components of multiple units. Jack Howell, Henry Blackburn, Chase Wilson, Dane Olson. How important is somebody like Jace Bella coming back, who's got a lot of experience? And how have you seen Tommy kind of get that collective together, because that will be a very important aspect of this opener? You
know, it's been a challenge. You know, I think the one thing, when you have so many new players, getting them all on the same page is the challenge, and that's, we knew that from the start. In special teams, there's a lot of things that only happen once in a while, and so, you know, we've been very conscious every week of putting our team in different situations, different special team situations. We've probably watched more special situations as a team than any time in my coaching career, and so we're trying to prepare our guys for the last 4 minutes of the game, whether we're in the lead or whether we're behind. We've spent a lot of time on those special situations and trying to educate our guys on how to handle them to win games. You know, when you look on paper, you know, their season and our season, very similar statistically. And so, you know, what's going to make the difference in the game? The difference in the game is going to be how each team handles the final 4 or 5 minutes of the game. And those special situations are really important. You know, I didn't get to see the beginning of Timmy's Hawaii game in Stanford, but I heard of some of the things that went on early, and that's typical of first games. You know, I did get a chance to see Kansas State and Iowa State, and that was a fantastic finish. And those end-of-game situations came up there. Iowa State had to get a 4th down. They had to manage the clock. You know, Kansas State used all 3 timeouts in the last 2 minutes. You know, just all those things that happen, you have to prepare for them. You got to give the players and coaches a feel for those situations so you're ready to be able to handle them. So I feel very confident that we prepared our team in those situations more than we ever have. So we're ready for those.
Talk about those new players, several of them being captains. Obviously, it's kind of speed dating in the portal. How do you make sure, not only talent-wise, but personality-wise, you're adding guys that you think enhance the locker room?
You know, we spend a lot of time on that, and it is speed dating. You have to really get into some conversations that matter very quickly, and you know, we find out very quickly what's important to a player. And I've said this before, but we look for players that value winning over everything else. You know, in this day and age with the transfer portal and NIL, you know, if kids are talking about money and those are the most important things, probably not the right kid for us. But a kid that wants opportunity, that wants an opportunity to lead, to play, to show what he can do, those are the kind of guys that we really like. And they also have a track record. They've played at other schools. They've been consistent, dependable people for their teams. The odds are they're going to be consistent, dependable for us. And so we really look at all that. And I think we really hit the money with the kids that we brought in. We're very happy with them. We just don't have any bad apples. I think, our roster is very different than we first got here. We have a lot of like-minded people. We have a lot of people that think the same way, and it's a pleasure to coach them. When you have guys that think like you as a coach, you really don't have to communicate a lot. I don't talk nearly as much as I talked my first year here, and so that's really, really great. And guys stand out if they're selfish now, and we just don't have that in our locker room anymore, and I'm very proud of that.
How do you feel about the state of the D-line going into this season?
That's really good. I think we've improved, and I think we have an opportunity to have the best D-line that I've had since we've been here. Very, very excited about the kids we brought in. I'm very excited about some of the kids that have been here that have really worked their tail off to get in position. Greg Jones is a new addition that's done a great job. Mukende's led that group. I'm really excited about a number of those players. I think we're too deep in the D-line, and I think we're going to handle some of the new adjustments very well.
Looking past all the things the team deems irrelevant on Saturday, how important is it for these young guys and the new leaders to have a challenge like facing Washington?
No, it's always fun when you play a good football team and a team from another conference. We're going, like I said, I think I said it last week, I'm a Midwest kid, right? And I grew up in my basement in December watching the Rose Bowl and dreaming about going to California and all that stuff. I never thought I'd live in Colorado and have to travel west to play a Big Ten team. But that's where we are in college football now. But it's a great venue. I always felt like in the Pac-12, Washington was more like a Big Ten school than any of the West Coast schools. They just have that makeup, and I think it goes all the way back to Don James and the way that they play. He was a physical, hard-nosed coach, played great defense, and they played great defense there over the years. So great tradition at Washington. It'll be a different kind of environment for our guys. Whenever you play in the Northwest, all the stadiums have those overhangs and keeps the noise in. And, but it's right there by the bay and on the water. It's a beautiful setting, and it'll be a great experience for our guys, and we look forward to it. That's what college football is all about, to go someplace new and to play a great program. And, our guys are looking forward to it and going to have fun with it.
You mentioned Ryan Walters. Do you look at his defense and what he ran at Purdue, or do you go back more to what he ran at Illinois when he was the defensive coordinator?
You look at all of it, really, and there's no guarantee that they're going to line up and play like they did last year or at Illinois. So, just look at his history and look what he's had success with. And, there'll be some things I'm sure that they'll do that he's done, and I'm sure there'll be some new things that they do. But, he's got a great track record as a defensive coach. And we're excited for the challenge.
They've got a lot of size at corner. I think both their projected starters are like 6'4". Does that change potentially how you guys approach things offensively, or can you not really factor into that?
No, we just got to be aware of it. I think it's important to be aware. I think for a lot of the off season, you study team schemes from a year ago, and you watch all these schemes and plays and that, and I reminded them today, hey guys, we're playing human beings. We got to play against Coleman and Boston and Williams and those guys, and we got to line up and play, and we got to understand their strengths and weaknesses and attack them that way, and that's important. But we're aware of their size at corner, and they got some big guys up front too, and so we're aware of that. We prepared for that, and we're ready to execute against it.
You've got a couple of big guys in your tight end positions. How do you see yourself utilizing them on Saturday?
Yeah, I like our tight end room. I think our tight end room is got a lot of potential. Jackson Warren's been with us for over a year now. He was hurt last year. And we really felt like he was a great addition a year ago, and we kind of were disappointed that he couldn't help us a year ago. He's ready to go now. He's been in our system. He understands it. And him and Braden have got great chemistry together. So we're excited about him. Rocky Beers has also been a really great addition, a guy that's played a lot. And he's done everything we've asked him to do since we got here. So we love the tight end position. It's always been an important position for us offensively, and we're excited to watch those guys play this year.
Looking at the tight ends from a few years, just a few years ago, it's almost a completely new room now. Was that expected for you, or is this kind of a surprise?
No, we are constantly looking to add to that room. We look for some very specific traits at tight end, and whenever we can get a guy that has those traits, we want to bring them in. But we do play college football. Guys graduate, they move on, and we have to have good players in the wings that come in and fill in for them. But both of those guys have the qualities we look for, and we're excited to get them involved in our offense.
Some of the other returning guys like Maher and Dupree, how excited are you for them to be able to take the next step this year?
Yeah, I think it's, those guys are guys that played a year ago, but now have a bigger role. And, Dupree, I tell you, I love our running back room. Our running backs are all very talented. They are all a little bit different. You talk about Justin Marshall and his ability to run, and Lloyd, bringing Lloyd in. Lloyd's been a great addition. And Javion Kennard, our little freshman, he's like a ball of energy now. Our guys have a hard time tagging him, let alone tackling him. So, we got an excellent room. Keegan's done a great job. So all those guys are fun, and, we think they're all going to contribute over the course of the year. So we're really excited about them. Tommy's been leading our receiver room, and, he's mature beyond his years. And so we're really excited about his leadership as well.
You said at the end of the bowl game last year, you weren't so worried about offensive system, so to speak, but what you had talent-wise and how that dictated what you would do. What have you learned since spring about these players that you have and how you hope to be able to utilize them?
I think we have a lot of playmakers, which is really exciting offensively. And I think we have a quarterback that's had to learn different styles. He's been in a strictly air raid system, and then last year we were a little bit more pro style. And so, he's going to leave here with a great understanding of offensive football and how to play. He's played under center, he's played in the gun, and he's played with different types of players. And I think all those experiences are good for Colorado State football. I sat here a couple years ago, and we had to talk about how we're playing a freshman quarterback. There's growing pains and all that. Well, now this is the payoff. We got probably the most experienced quarterback in our league, and when you go play on the road in the non-conference, it's important that you have a guy that has those kind of experiences. So I'm excited about the playmakers that we have, and I'm excited about Braden leading them.
So his ability to be an offensive chameleon, so to speak, how does that help you as you face different types of defenses?
It's very helpful. One of the things, I spent 6 years in pro football, and one of the things when you're in pro football is you have experienced guys. So when you want to adjust and play different schemes, they can adjust because they have a background in football knowledge. Braden's getting to be one of those guys now. And not every college player is. But we've done a lot with Braden. We give him a lot of freedom to change plays, probably more than most people in college football do. And that was, from my history, with Tom Moore and the Indianapolis Colts and with Peyton and how we did things there. We do a lot of things similar to that. And so we're not afraid of that. And Peyton has learned through a lot of those situations. And so You know, there's a Rolodex of information that he has in his brain. And, you know, and we communicate a lot. You know, I can say, hey, remember when we did this 2 years ago? And he'll be like, yeah, let's do that. Came up in our scrimmage Saturday in our 2-minute drill. We got to something that we hadn't done, but you can get to it quickly and spit it out with a guy with his type of experience. So that's exciting and it's fun to coach guys like that. And it's starting to remind me of, you know, when we had Carson, you know, and we could do so much with Carson, and he had such a passion for the game, and it was fun. It was fun to call it with Carson. And you know, Carson's here now with Braden, and I think Carson's influence and insight has really helped him settle down and really take advantage of the opportunities he has.
Yeah, and you talked about your players' experience. For you and for them, what's it like to open the season going against one of the more stronger teams that you're scheduled against?
Yeah, it's always fun to go play a good football team, and they're a solid team. I think they're a lot like us, to be honest with you. You know, a lot of similarities to their team last year. It's just going to come down to who focuses and executes the best. We've talked a lot about that as a team. You know, how to go on the road and what things are important to us, and so, you know, our home field is wherever we walk in the white lines. It doesn't have to be in Fort Collins. So, you know, that's the mindset that we have to have. And, you know, and you know, last time I checked, the field's 100 yards, right? Just like here. And our kids got to remember that, and then we got to go out and play and execute that way. Thank you.